Hey everybody, it's Jork. Welcome back. I hope you're doing great wherever you are in the world. Today's video is talking a little bit about doctors and nurses striking in Portugal. And it's something I didn't really touch on when we lived in Portugal, but as we just moved back to the United States, I did want to let those of you know that are seeking a move to Portugal that there may be a reality that depending on where you live in the country, that you may have limited services when it comes to medical services, as doctors and nurses have gone on strike, not just here in 2024, but in past years. Much of it has to do when we moved in 2019. I was looking through old newspaper articles, didn't see a lot of doctors or nurses striking that much, like 2018, 17, 16. You in Portugal may disagree with that, and great, that I just didn't see a lot of it. But I will say during the pandemic, because they had to work, I'll say hundreds of extra hours each year for 2 years, and I don't think they, when it came to compensation, time off, working conditions, I don't think they got any of that stuff. So at least that's what's come across, because as we came out of things in 2022, 2023, there were certain places in the country where there might be a 1 or 2 day strike where doctors or nurses were just going to say, we're not going to be working. In some cases, it was more than 1 day. And I didn't want to make this video to try to alarm people going, hey, if you move to Portugal and something happens, you're not going to be able to go see a doctor or not going to be able to have a nurse attend. That's not the case at all. When they've even had a national strike, it's not all doctors across the country, all nurses. There's still like minimal services or minimum services offered. So it is something, though, that as you are considering a move to Portugal, or if you've recently moved, it is probably important to just do some research and look up doctor strike Lisbon, doctor or nurse strike Porto, or Coimbra, or Sesimbra. Depending on where you're going to be potentially moving, it is helpful to know if there's certain parts of the country that might be more prone to having doctors or nurses go on strike than other parts of the country. When we lived in Portugal, every trade union that could go on strike did, I believe. Everything out there, maybe not firefighters. I don't know how their union is, but police, teachers often, but and many of the government employees, just based upon their scenarios. And much of it in this case with doctors and nurses has to do with years of what they feel are poor working conditions, poor pay, not getting the advancement in pay or time off that maybe unions and other sectors are getting. And we had a doctor that lived 2 buildings over, and when we had conversations with him, he would be very honest and just say his kids are doctors, but they're doctors here in the United States. He told them, go get the degree and get out of Portugal, because your quality of life is going to be in exponentially better, because he said his one son was making, I don't know, 300,000 or 400,000 a year here in the States. I don't know where his son was living, but he said he was making 75,000 euros a year in what he was doing. So he just said at some point maybe his kids will end up moving back to Portugal, because they'll have made a lot of money abroad, and then they'll be able to enjoy a great life back in Portugal. But he was fearful that in 2025, 2026, 2027, there'll just be more people, more tendency for doctors and nurses to go on strike, as there's a shortage of doctors staying in Portugal. There's a shortage of nurses getting their nursing certification to become nurses. So, and as more people move to Portugal, that can become just sort of this bubble of more people need services and there'll be less doctors and nurses to serve them. So I just make this video so that you are aware that do some research, do a Google search and look for doctors or nurses striking, especially those of you that might be that have some medical conditions or are worried about, making sure you have ongoing care. Again, it's not something that's a deal breaker, I don't think at all, but it is something it's one of those should be aware of because if you're coming, let's say, from the United States, I don't know of a situation where doctors or nurses have gone on strike in anywhere that I've lived. But in Portugal, it may come up in a particular area of the country where you're looking at. So just something to be aware of. It's not something to scare you. This is videos not to scare you away. It's not at all. It's to help you be informed so you know what you're getting into. So as always, thank you so much for watching and enjoy your travels.